My name is Lesley Jenkins, and I'd like to talk to you about my experiences of treatment and in particular the Trust-QuickTime drug trial. I contracted hepatitis C in 1985 when I had a blood transfusion after the birth of my first child. I didn't know at the time that blood was a problem, and after I had the transfusion I got on with the rest of my life. In 2004 I was beginning to get quite ill, and I've been going backwards and forwards to the doctor, and they'd done all kinds of tests and they all came back fine. Because I've never been a drug user and I've never had medical or dental treatment overseas, I didn't fall into a high risk category, and it didn't occur to them to do a Hep C test, and because I was unaware that blood was a problem, I didn't think to ask for one either. After 3 or 4 years of trying to get a diagnosis, I was losing faith in the medical profession. I knew there was something wrong. My symptoms were fatigue, headaches, joint pain. They were quite vague, but I knew there was something wrong, but they couldn't find anything. And I was self-employed at the time, and by the time we got to 2007, I'd decided to wind up my business and work less and try and get to the bottom of the illness and get myself fit again. So that's what I was doing, and in February 2007 I was listening to Radio 4 and I heard the Anita Roddick interview. Anita was talking about her hepatitis C. It was the first time she'd openly discussed it and said that she had the virus. She said that she'd got it from a blood transfusion in the 80s, and as I listened to her story, it was so similar to mine, I knew that that's what it was. And she talked about the symptoms, she talked about the problems with hepatitis C, and she could have been talking about me. So I knew that's what it was. Because of that interview, I went back to the GP and asked for a test. They did the test, and that's how we found the virus. So it's thanks to Anita, and unfortunately I'll not be able to thank her personally. I was lucky that I only had stage 2 fibrosis. I had a liver biopsy, but I wanted to do treatment the first time because I'd had the virus for a long time by then and I was getting quite symptomatic, so I wanted to do treatment. I did the 48 weeks because I had genotype 1A, and all the way through the symptoms were good. The blood tests were coming back fine, it was looking very good. At the end of the 48 weeks the virus was undetectable, but at 5 months post-treatment the virus came back. I was devastated that I'd gone all the way through it and I'd relapsed, and I started to ask about what my alternatives were, and at the time there was nothing else. There was 72 weeks of interferon and ribavirin again. I really didn't like the idea of doing that again, so I was looking around for other alternatives. I knew about the hepatitis C trust at that point because as soon as I got diagnosed I went on the internet and I found the trust. I rang the helpline and the people there were absolutely invaluable to me. They kept me sane and made me realise that there was life at the end of this diagnosis, that it wasn't a death sentence and that it wasn't as bleak as it felt. And speaking to other people who had been there and knew what I was going through was a real help. I also joined the internet forums, and through that I found out about a drug trial that was running at St Mary's Hospital in Paddington in London. Now I'm up in Yorkshire, so that's quite a way for me, but I rang the hospital and I asked about this new drug trial, and it was for the Trust-QuickTime. They explained to me that they were looking for non-responders or relapsers, of which I was one, of genotype 1, so I fit that criteria, but they said that because it was a trial, everything had to be done in London. Even a 5-minute blood test had to be done there, and I would have to travel from Yorkshire to London to do that. That was going to be quite expensive. Obviously the hospital and the drug company can't cover the costs of all of that, but they did help out as much as they could, and the people at St Mary's were fantastic, helping me and supporting me. They knew I was travelling a long way to do the trial. I went down for the screening tests in London and I passed all of those, and I was accepted onto the trial, which started in 2009, sorry. It was another 48 weeks of interferon and ribavirin, just the same, with a 24-week period at the beginning, from 1 week to week 24, of the drug trial. Now it was a double-blind trial, so I had a 2 in 3 chance of getting the telaprevir and 1 in 3 chance of getting the placebo, but I would be getting interferon and ribavirin, which was all that I had on offer anyway, so I reckoned it was a good chance. In the first 2 weeks, I spent most of my time down in London because I was needed at the hospital quite often. It wasn't worth coming back, so I stayed down there, and you were started with 24 weeks of pills, 12 of which were going to be the telaprevir and 12 wouldn't. That's if you got the trial drug and not the whole placebo. The protocol for taking them was a bit complicated. You had to take them 3 times a day with food, with an element of fat in the food. And I got a very nice list of things that I could take, like cream buns and cheese and crackers, so it wasn't an onerous diet by any means. The timing of it was quite strict, so it had to be every 8 hours. So the first one was given to me at the hospital and at about 11 o'clock in the morning, which meant the next one was 7 o'clock at night or so. But the one after that was in the early hours of the morning, so we had to set alarms for that. And you really don't feel like eating anything, and you just want to go back to sleep. So eating some food and taking the pill was quite a chore. But over a period of a few days, we could pull those timings back at sort of 15-minute intervals until they became more realistic and fit in with a routine. So it was interferon once a week, and the ribavirin and the telaprevir capsules, which were quite big, every day, 2 or 3 times a day. At the end of that, you had to wait until the trial was over before you found out when it was unblinded at 6 months post-treatment. During the trial, I had to keep a diary of side effects and symptoms, and I was looking frantically for any sign that I was on the telaprevir because I wanted to be on it. But to be honest, it wasn't a great deal different to treatment the first time around. Looking back on it, knowing that I did get the telaprevir, I did get pruritus for a couple of weeks, which was quite uncomfortable, but I took lanacane powder and things like that to try and ease that, and cool baths and cool showers. I got a little bit of diarrhoea, which was not a problem, and I was maybe a bit more tired, but that could have been down to the travel as well, because I was travelling backwards and forwards to London all the time. But to be honest, the telaprevir didn't leave me personally with any great symptoms. I needed a bit more support from family to do tasks. They did shopping for me and they helped around the house. I was maybe a bit more tired, but I'd done treatment the second time not very long after the first, so I was quite tired anyway. But it was doable with support and putting things in place and the help of family and friends. It was doable. It was hard, but it was doable. And I knew all the time that this was a good chance of clearing the virus, and that kept me focused and kept me going. At the end of the 48 weeks, the virus was undetectable. I had to wait the 6 months, and in July 2010 I achieved SVR, and it turned out that I had had the telaprevir, so it was all worth it anyway. That's my story.